Welcome to In Conversations with. This is a series of discussions with people who hold advanced degrees in the life sciences about their careers and career journeys. My name is Chandrima Majumdar, and I'm a postdoc at the University of California, Berkeley. I'm also a member of the ASBMB Education and Professional Development Committee.
Hi, I'm Chris Heinen, and I'm a professor of medicine at the University of Connecticut School of Medicine and the director of postdoctoral affairs here at UConn Health. And I'm also a member of the ASBMB Education and Professional Development Committee. And we're excited to start this new series of conversations covering the vast array of careers that are possible for graduate students and postdocs with PhDs in the life sciences. And so to start these series of conversations off, we thought we would start with some of our fellow EPD committee members because we realize that there's so many different careers that are represented right in our own committee. And so today we're excited to have our fellow EPD member, Dr. Shai Brown, with us. Shai is the founder and president and executive director of Building Bridges. Shai, thanks so much for joining us today. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be a part of this conversation.
So, Shai, would you like to give us a brief introduction to yourself and your background?
Yeah. So like Chris said, I am the founder, president, executive director of Building Bridges, which is a nonprofit that is focused on exposing Black and Brown girls to STEM education and also building their STEM confidence. Besides working as a nonprofit director, executive director, I've also worked in industry. Particularly working with Gatorade Sports Science Institute as a lead biochemist for their exercise physiology and sports science lab.
That's awesome. You seem to have a really varied background. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your nonprofit organization? Tell us
Of,
about Building Bridges.
of course. Like I said, Building Bridges, we focus on exposing that STEM confidence for young Black and Brown girls and building that STEM confidence. If you were to ask me, was starting a nonprofit part of my journey? Not at all. I did not set out to start a nonprofit while I was in graduate school. This was not even on my mind. I like to tell people I didn't find Building Bridges found me. So it was one of those things. I was actually finishing up my dissertation at Tennessee State University. And so within the last 2 semesters, I had connected with a group of young Black girls who lived down the street from TSU. So for some of you who may not know the Nashville area, there are 3 HBCUs within the same neighborhood. You have Tennessee State University, you have Meharry Medical College, and you have Fisk University. Well, these group of young girls live right across the street from Fisk University. So I would connect with them on a weekly basis on Wednesdays. And I would meet with them at another colleague's house who lived across the street as well. She was a colleague that I had met at Vanderbilt during my time doing some, what do you call it? STEM education what was it called? Oh my gosh, I am blanking out. Anyway, I was getting experience at Vanderbilt to teach in the classroom, sciences in the classroom. Sorry about that.
Mhm.
Well, she invited me to be a part of this group. I was connecting with them once a week, and it was great. Well, it got time for me to finish my dissertation, and I stopped attending those weekly meetups. Um, Nothing to not wanting to attend. I just need to graduate. I need to finish writing. I need to prep for my dissertation. Well, one day she came to me and she told me that the girls miss me and they would like for me to come back. And I said, I understand, but I got to graduate and I got to find a job. And she said, okay, I get that, but I want to share something with you that I overheard the girls talking about and it disturbed me. I said, okay, what was that? She told me that she felt like the girls were having confidence issues because they were talking about their hair. And they said how they wanted to grow up and marry a man of another race so that their children can have good hair. And that disturbed me as a Black woman with natural hair, with locks. That disturbed me a lot. So I said, okay, you know what? I don't like that. We got to do something about this. So after I finished my dissertation, I defended. I asked my PI, hey, can I use this lab and invite students to come view the lab and do something with them? She said, of course. I got a parent consent forms. They signed that and I invited them out to the lab. So what they were able to do is visit my lab. We talked about the biology of hair, the science behind it, and they made their own hair shampoos and conditioners
Wow, that's
and
incredible.
wrapped up with a night of self-love and affirmations. And so that was the first program of building bridges without me even knowing a building bridges would be formed. So that's pretty much how that got started.
So I know even here at our own institution, um, our grad students are great. They volunteer in the community. They work with young students. So how do you go from that to turning this into something more formal, like Building Bridges has become?
Yeah, yeah. So I will say it started more so when I started working in industry because I got bored. And with that, I started to think about ways like, okay, how can I make this more tangible for, students to get access, students to get exposure, because that's what it was about. They had to get exposed to learn that, oh, science is behind hair shampoos and conditioners, right? There are chemists in the lab, right? You have to know the science behind biology in order to do that. So long story short, and we can come back to it if you wish. It was just one of those things to where I started to connect with schools, to understand, hey, what do you do in your classrooms, behind science? What type of hands-on experiments do you have? I also started to connect with other nonprofit youth groups like Big Brothers Big Sisters. Well, they are a totally type of mentoring organization. That's what they offer. So I came to them and said, hey, would you like to expose more of your students to more science and STEM related programs? And so that's pretty much how that relationship building started to get over time, just to understand, what other nonprofit youth groups were seeking, what other K through 12 schools were seeking as well.
Yeah. So
That's
what does being
incredible.
the executive director mean?
Oh, that means I do all the work.
Yeah.
No, so basically, being the executive director, that is equivalent as being the CEO of a for-profit institution. So sometimes people say CEO, executive director, pretty much meaning the same thing. And my day-to-day duties is pretty much running the nonprofit, running a group of, I believe, 12 at the moment. So that's overseeing interns from the University of Chicago and Illinois Institute of Technology here in Chicago. That's also overseeing program managers, program coordinators, overseeing our board, and also communicating with our advisory council. So there are a lot of different pieces. Building partnerships is another thing of that, right? Constant communication. So again, almost like I'm doing everything, but being able to pull in interns and say, hey, you're responsible for all the social media content for this particular month, or pulling in one of my program coordinators who's also in the Philippines and asking her to manage the team from a task management standpoint. So
That's
again,
like
I
an
would like
incredible
to
journey.
say
Yeah.
I did not go looking for this. It found me.
Yeah, and kind of building off of that, like how did you develop the skills and how did you identify what needs to be done to make building bridges what it is today?
I would like to say industry. My time in industry helped with this. So before going into industry, I didn't even know that was going to be a part of my journey because I wasn't preparing to go into industry.
So I'm
Um,
sorry to interrupt you real quick, but maybe we can, so we didn't really set the stage that you're also working another job in
well,
the
no,
industry. So
I was working
you are,
another job.
okay. Okay, very good. But maybe you can back up and just introduce that really quickly and then finish where you were going with that. So the
Uh,
other job you used to have was what?
being lead biochemist for Gatorade Sports Science Institute.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so with that industry, position, I'm basically where I'm leading to is in graduate schools, some of the skills that I pretty much had during that time, I was managing undergraduates at the time. So my PI had a lot of undergrads that loved to come through her lab. And I was the only graduate student that would accept them. No other graduate student wanted them because they felt like, oh, they're going to take up my time and they're going to mess up my experiments. It's like, no, you just have to be patient with them because they will get it. And once they get it, you don't have to be in the lab. But no, no one else wanted to take the time to teach the undergraduate students how to do ELISAs, how to do Western blots, how to do PCR. But I did that. So I would say that is one skill that I picked up in graduate school is the management piece and delegating. All right, now going off into industry, which was a whole another thing that I again was not even preparing for. I thought I was going to be working at a university and teaching and having my own lab. Um, Being in industry taught me a lot of things, and I picked up a lot of skills. One in business. Um, I feel like that being in industry, I was able to work in a lot of different teams. So although my job was mostly research, I had to learn how to work with marketing team. Had to learn how to work with the sensory team. I had to learn how to work with the product development team. So it's all these different types of communications going on. But here I am, I'm just the lead biochemist, but I had to learn how to communicate with them as well. Partnership building. That is another thing that I learned while working in industry as well. Because a lot of times, if I needed to get work done, I had to go meet new people. Um, our building was in a suburban area. So sometimes I would have to go downtown in the city of Chicago and meet new people in marketing. So networking, getting out of my comfort zone to say, "Hey, how are you doing? I'm that biochemist in Barrington that's working on this, but I need to talk to you about something else in order to complete my job." So all of that, just taking in the network, the partnership building, the communication, and learning how to work on different teams. Also understanding that the whole funding aspect of what it is like being in industry and how industry supports local community organizations. That was another part of it, and understanding on the inside what corporate partners can do for the community on the outside. And so that was another part of that as well.
So, I'm trying. So I apologize. This is why we let you guys tell your own biography instead of us messing it up for you. So I apologize for the correction. But there was a time when the two overlapped, right? The nonprofit and your
yeah, there was a time it overlapped.
So
So
what was that transition? What allowed you to say, you know what, this is it. This is what I'm going to do full time now.
oh, I didn't make that decision on my own. I was kind of coerced into it.
Okay.
So there was a building closure where I worked. It happened in 2022. So if that building wouldn't not have closed, I probably still would have been there, doing the job that I was currently used to do. So building closure happened, affected so many people, and I was given the opportunity to relocate to New York. Well, at the time, New York was not a good fit. And so I felt the need to stay planted here in Chicago because things were starting to, pick up. We already had partnerships here. So I decided to stay planted and then jump into becoming a nonprofit executive director full time.
Yeah.
And it was a big leap. It was a big leap because um, there's not much money in nonprofit work compared to what I was getting working in industry. But because I am very passionate about the work that I do and I see how it changes lives every time I go to a school, I know it's very well needed.
So you mentioned
So
a little bit when you were working in industry that you learned how industry supports the local communities, and you were also kind of concurrently working on building bridges. How did you juggle both of those two roles at the same time?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So Again, Building Bridges started in 2018. Yes, became a nonprofit in 2018. So I got bored and only doing industry work. I'm like, okay, I need to do something meaningful with my life.
Mm.
That's what I felt like. Um, Juggling the two wasn't bad. I was also able to weave in what I do with my industry work. So I can give one good example, one great example.
Okay.
So I would tell people about the nonprofit just passingly, over lunch, um, in the hallway, by the water cooler type of thing, just having a conversation. So, Shy, what are you doing this weekend? Oh, I have a STEM program. And that's how those conversations got started. People wanted to learn more. Are you looking for volunteers? Things just started to like grow. Well, my name started to get passed around the company. So I kind of became like the STEM person, what have
Mm.
you, right? So my name started to get passed around, and I had PepsiCo associate in Canada to reach out to me. So it was during the pandemic when a lot of things went virtual, and they needed an idea to do like a camp virtually with some other youth in Toronto. And they pulled me in, say, "Hey, we heard you have a nonprofit. Yes. Can you help us with this STEM program and help us plan it? Yes. Can I bring in Building Bridges if I do this? Because I'm not doing this solely off of PepsiCo.
Mm.
Yes. Okay. Great STEM program, full week. I was able to bring in volunteers from the PepsiCo side to volunteer for Building Bridges. I was also able to get PepsiCo volunteers to pack kits for Building Bridges. And it was a full week. Fast forward the following year, that Building Bridges and PepsiCo partnership was able to get a company award for their work in diversity and engagement.
Wow. Congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
you mentioned the pandemic a little bit, and I'm just curious, how did you kind of navigate that time with building bridges? Like, how did you move your programs virtually? How were you still doing outreach?
Yeah, it was a strong pivot to, okay, we got to do virtually. How do we do that? And we literally started packaging kits. So everything that we did from a bulk standpoint, we started to minimize and say, okay, if we're going to do our Love the Skin You're In program, which features girls making their own sugar scrubs and learning about the biology of skin, how do we make sure there's enough materials for a one-time use? And our team started to do that. We individually packaged things out, put them in a box, put a Building Bridge sticker on it, and hey, things were able to get sent out. And so not only were we able to do that Canada STEM camp, we also did our own STEM camp, and we worked with some other youth groups as well from a virtual standpoint.
That's awesome. Are these kits still available? Is this still something that Building Bridges is doing?
We don't, because we don't get, call for virtual engagement. It doesn't mean that we won't or we can't, but
Mm.
it's been a while because, everything is went back in person now.
No, got it, got it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'd
Nice.
like to know from everyone, what's the one thing about this job that stresses you out the most and keeps you up at night? And then what's the thing that you just love so much that it makes it all worth it?
Keeps me up at night. I don't stay up, I go to sleep. So it don't keep me
Good.
up at night. Because I will go to sleep at 8:30, 9 o'clock. But the one thing that stresses me out, I wouldn't say stresses me out either, causes a little bit more thinking and how am I going to do that? Is funding. That's
Mm.
always the number one. Like, okay, how are we going to get more funding resources, right? Because, I need more staff to do more things. We need to be able to do more programs. So, and getting creative with ways to bring in funding. Grants are hard. They're hard to get.
Mhm.
We got our first grant this year. It's coming to an end this particular month in December. But it's like, okay, what's the next, funding source or grant we're going to go after, or, you know, which one are, we've already submitted so many, now we're waiting to hear back. That is like the number one thing is funding, because if we're able to have the right amount of funding, we can do more, we can bring in more staff. And so it'll just, you know, that's just one of the things that for me is really the funding piece, because there are ways to bring in funds to do more. So, you know, we are a vendor within the Chicago Public Schools. So that's a way for us to do stuff. We're vendors with Chicago State University, Harper College. So we can do summer camps at those universities and 2-year colleges. But okay, how are we still able to increase that from a perspective of, you know, do we need to get another corporate partner? So that all that strategic thinking and planning around that stays on my mind a lot.
How did you, I mean, that's not something that you typically think about as a graduate student in a biochemical program. So where did that part come from? How did you figure out how to navigate that part of it?
I don't think I was thinking about that in graduate school.
No. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
not at all. I was networking in graduate school.
Okay.
I was networking
Yeah.
quite a bit at the ASBMB conferences. So I was definitely networking quite a bit. And, you know, trying to understand, you know, how can this, you know, network lead to another possible connection, right? And
Mhm.
so I will say that skill really be got honed into more when I got into industry, basically.
Mhm.
The industry world helped me understand more, you know, the purpose of networking and creating those meaningful and strategic connections.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the
So
second part, the thing that you love that makes the funding headaches worth it.
Oh man, I will have to say, like, being in a classroom setting and hearing a young girl, even young boy, because we also do this with boys as well, hearing one of them say, "Oh, I actually like science now." That it's just the light bulb goes off, because
Yeah.
they were able to do like a hands-on STEM experiment that they could relate to, and they got it and they connected with it. And then I, you know, hearing comments like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Now I want to be a food scientist." Or, you know, "Now I want to be an engineer," because they did something with building bridges.
Takes them out of that class textbook and puts them into real life, right?
It really does. It really does. And I really enjoy that a lot. Also, reading the um, comments on the surveys. One comment I saw recently: "I would like to work for Building Bridges one day." Like, come on. Like, okay,
Yeah,
that is cute. I
right.
love it. I love it.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds incredibly rewarding. So I want to briefly go back to something you mentioned earlier. You mentioned you networked a lot during grad school, especially at the ASBMB conferences. And for the grad students that are listening, I just want you to like lay out what were the things that you did? Where did you go and find these people to network with? What resources did you use at your university?
Um, Starting with the conferences, I would go like to the mixers.
Mm-hmm.
I developed conference friends over time. I don't know if that's still a thing where
Uh-huh.
you develop your conference friends, and every time you go to the conference, you see the same people. You may not interact with them all year, but once you go to
Right.
the conference, it's like, "Oh, hey, how's it been going?" Also, because I would enter the poster competitions, and I would get travel awards. So I would have to be at some of the award poster things where I will have to present, and so people coming to talk to me at my poster. So that was another great time for networking outside of talking about my research.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always collecting business cards. I had business cards at that time as a graduate student that I was giving out as well. Um, yeah, those are the top things that jump out to me from a conference standpoint. And then what was the other part you asked? I forgot.
Yeah, I asked about resources at your university that you made use of to build your network.
Resources at my university.
Or like in your community at the time when you were a grad student?
For networking. This goes back to when I was talking about early in the conversation. I had a colleague at Vanderbilt.
Right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I actually was part of a program called Scientists in the Classroom. So that allowed me to not only network with graduate students at my school, but also at Meharry and Vanderbilt. And that gave us the opportunity to get into the classroom 7th through 12th grade and teach science. So that was a really good building block for me. I think that is kind of like one of the things I really enjoyed in graduate school was being able to break down science to where a seventh grader or eighth grader to understand. And that stuck with me. And so having that building block while in graduate school, adding on networking, making those strategic connections, then going to industry, then starting a nonprofit, I think that all kind of like helped shaped where I am right now.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You mentioned like that's how you got into thinking about making building bridges. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's incredible that you set the network up right then.
yes.
Um,
So I'm wondering if you've got some general advice you could give to a young PhD that's either is passionate about something and would love to start their own nonprofit, or perhaps work with some existing group that's already out there doing it.
Yeah, I
How do
would
you find to connect
say,
with those and get headway into that?
okay, yeah, I would say if there's like any local community groups that the university partners with, I think that will be a starting point.
Mhm.
I wouldn't recommend starting from scratch because it is a lot of work. But if you could tap into some existing networks at your local university, within the local community, that would be a starting standpoint. Also, any clubs on campus, right? I know there are some ASB&B student chapters. You could actually say, hey, we want to do go into the classroom at a local school nearby and do this science experiment, or we want to invite a class to come to our university, take a tour, and we do some type of experiment with them at the school. There are so many creative ways to think about it. It just depends on one, if you have the capacity, two, what type of funding you have to get it done, and three, how creative can you be in getting the information across to the target audience, whether it being a middle schooler, elementary, or even high school student?
Mhm. Just coming to that specific getting into the classroom, I was just curious. I mean, is that how sort of how willing of partner? I'm sure the students are motivated and excited, but what about the schools themselves, the teachers, the administration? Are they willing partners? Is that sometimes difficult? How has that worked out?
It always just depends on the school and that environment. It really does. So I have come across willing schools, and a lot of times, sometimes it's the science teacher reaching out.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's the principal saying, "We need this and we don't have it. Can you provide it?" Um, Yeah, and I've taken the initiative to do the initial reach out, and sometimes they just don't need it, or sometimes we just don't have the funding, right? And so it really depends on the school itself, and also whether or not it's if it's a need at that school, right? Because you would want to, reach those communities to where, they don't have the resources, they don't have the exposure. So, how can you be able to, go to a particular community that needs the exposure, needs to be equipped, needs to be empowered, right? In order to give them what they're, could be very beneficial from them and being exposed to some type of STEM hands-on experiment.
Mhm. Yeah, Shai, I like your story so much because this started as something that you were volunteering in as a grad student just because you felt passionate about it and you thought it was something important, and I presume personally rewarding for you to be able to be involved with that. And as you said, it wasn't something that you ever thought would amount to anything in terms of a career, and yet here you are now.
Mhm.
And that, you know, just, you don't know how these stories are going to go sometimes, right? And so,
Right.
but yet when you look back, it all kind of made sense, right? But when you look
Mhm.
forward, you have no idea, right?
Right. I'm still looking forward and I don't have no idea.
Yeah, right. That doesn't ever change, does it, somehow?
It never changes. It never changes. But I can look back to say, wow, I can see how that experience at, being a part of Vanderbilt and the Scientists in the Classroom program, how that prepared me to start a nonprofit, right? So, like you said, it's one of those things. My career path is definitely not linear. It was one of those things to where I was honestly trying things out. Even like going back to undergrad, I did summer internships pretty much every year, but my expertise changed. I started out in computational biology and bioinformatics.
Mhm.
And then I went from visual analytics. Then I started working at a national lab as a post back. Then I went into immunology and cancer biology, and then ended up in exercise science and sports physiology. Is like, why so many different fields, right? But it's one of those things that I'm thankful that all my skills were transferable. I can jump across fields, and it's one of those things to where I feel like exposure helped at the moment because it helped me understand. No, I do not want to be in bioinformatics. That is not what I want to do. Okay, cool. Doing the internship helped with that. Um, yeah, immunology and biochemistry is also cool as well, but I think I want to use this to work with athletes. So just
Mhm.
really being open
Mhm.
to the different opportunities really helped me to get to where I am.
This actually sets us up perfectly for a question I've been meaning to ask you, which is how did you move from immunology to exercise physiology, and how did you, I guess, sell your transferable skills and when you were making that transition?
Well, I like to thank ASBNB for this opportunity because I found the job flyer at an ASBNB conference in Chicago. So I always rave about ASBNB because it's been one of those things. That's how I was able to find opportunities and connect with people. And so I wasn't even looking to go into industry. I was literally at a conference and I'm walking the job boards and I see a posting and I took a picture of it and I email the contact person. That's how that started. And I got an interview.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I was able to sell my transferable skills, I really don't remember. I was just honestly myself over the phone. And I talked mostly about my immunology work, and I talked about my willingness to learn a new skill because I was going into a field that I was not prepared for. Yes, I taught anatomy and physiology labs 1 and 2 during graduate school, but I never did human clinical trials.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first time for me. I had to learn that. And they took a chance on me, and I'm so happy that they did because I was able to pick up so many new skills along the way.
That's awesome. So, how was that first year in industry like when you made that transition?
Oh, you're taking me back now. You're taking me back now. Oh my gosh. I will say imposter syndrome set in.
Mhm.
Yes, it really did. And it was one of those things to where I was always trying to, well, I was kind of struggling a little bit because I had to change my mindset to take the knowledge that I have in immunology. I was the only person on the team with that background, and they want to do some new research in bringing that into exercise science and sports physiology. But I also had to change my mindset to say, okay, I know this knowledge. How can I make it applicable? Right? How can I take my knowledge to form something tangible? Because in graduate school, you're doing research, you're getting data, but you
Mm-hmm.
can't see it.
Right.
My work in industry, I could see it. I could see the products that came to be. I could see the GX patch that I worked on.
Mm.
It's like you're always working towards a goal to, at the end of the day, make money. And so I had to change the mindset to say, okay, take what you know and make it applicable in order to release this product. And that took a while. That actually did take a year to get that formulating, but also to make that switch of, okay, I'm the only person here who knows this background. They're leaning on me. Oh man, that means I gotta know everything. Like it took a while. It really did take a while. It took about a year in order to make that transition happen. But after that, I found my stride because I started to tell myself, well, I am here because I know this background, right? And then I got very comfortable in that, became the lead biochemist, transitioning from postdoc to that. And yeah, so it became one of those things to where I wanted my voice to be heard over time, but it took a
Finding that
while.
sense of self-confidence, it's a big part of this process. I tell students when they start here that, in a couple of years, they're going to be the world's leading expert on something. And I don't think
Hmm.
they really believe that, right? And like in your new situation, you were the expert there, but it's hard to sometimes believe that, I imagine, right? And it took a little time
Yeah,
to
yeah,
say, yeah,
like
I know, I am the expert.
I am the expert. And so I was making recommendations and saying, if we're going to be doing all these alliances, we need a mag picks. So it's like they didn't have that. And so I came in saying, we need this. And they listened,
Yeah.
or I came in saying, oh, we need to add on this panel of cytokines for this particular study. They
Mm.
listened. So I then again became her because I was able to bring forth my knowledge in my cytokine work in graduate school to say, hey, we need to look at these particular cytokines. We need this type of equipment to make this happen because I'm not about to be running so many different ELISAs. I need a panel of different cytokines to run all at the same time.
That's awesome. Shai, you've had such an incredible career journey, so many different transitions. I was wondering if you had a way to meet your younger self, maybe when you were finishing up undergrad or starting out grad school, what is one thing you'd like to tell her about how your career played out?
Can I go back younger? Can I go back
Oh,
a little
for
bit?
sure.
Can I
You
go
can
back
go back to
younger? I
whatever
want to
time
go
you
back
want.
younger. I want to go back younger first, and then I'll go to graduate school. I would tell my younger self, don't lose your creativity. Yes, growing up, I love science. I love science fairs. I would win science fairs. Dissecting was my thing in high school. But along the way, I noticed my creative passion start to fade. And so I grew up drawing animation
Mhm.
characters. So good at it. I love cartoons, and I was at this space. Oh man, I'm going to be an animator. Like I'm going to be drawing all these different things for cartoons. Baking. Oh my
Mm.
gosh, love to bake. I was at a baking class yesterday, by the way. I
Wow.
I love that. It's something about, I don't know, being creative with, sweets and baked goods. And but those oh, and the other thing, writing. Writing. I was writing short stories in second grade. So again, those creative aspects, they slowly started to fade away as I
Mhm.
became more mature, and the hormones and all of that. And then I decided on science. Like, okay, I'm going to go in that route. I'm going to become a medical doctor. That's what I set out to do. Well, going into I mean, not graduate school, undergrad, um, medical doctor went away. I was too afraid to take the MCAT. That's a whole nother story I'm not going to get into right now. Too afraid to take the MCAT. And that's when I started doing all these different summer internships that focus on different things. So I would tell my younger self to, one, have a better vision. Have a better vision of what I wanted. I thought it was going to be medical school for me. Pediatric surgeon. That was it.
Mm.
I was zoned in on that, and then I got afraid to take the MCAT. So vision. And then the second thing I would say creeping into graduate school, find a good mentor. Yes, my PI, she was great, but I felt like I needed someone outside of research to be a mentor to help guide me on all the different things I was doing, because I was doing a lot during graduate school. Research, teaching undergrads, teaching middle school students, all this stuff was going on, but the sense of direction was just graduate. That was
Mhm.
it. Graduate. Become Dr. Shy Brown. But there was no like mentorship happening at the time. So I would tell myself to seek a mentor outside of my PI, because my PI did what she needed me to do. Like, I came out of her lab with 4 first author papers. So she did her job. But outside of that, I didn't have anyone else talking in my ear as like a mentor, just overseeing the entire picture to say, so what is your vision like? How are you going to
Mhm.
use these experiences? So that's what I would tell myself. Have a better vision, and have an outside mentor.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Shai, for spending some time with us today and telling us about your career. We really enjoyed learning more about it and speaking with you. For listeners who want to continue this conversation, you can visit our ASBMB active site, where there'll be a thread up on this episode today where you can continue the conversation and ask questions. So thank you, Chandrima. Good to see you again. Shai, thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.